Okay, we're live again here at our Kintec studios. I'm Dr. Michael Ryan, and with me again, I have the distinct pleasure of having Ryan Melcher back in the studio with me. Today we're going to continue running discussion, part 2. Just a couple notes here on my housekeeping to let everyone know to check out our previous Facebook Live posts on the Kintec Facebook page. These are a great resource to look through and for both running and for injury related questions. Check out our blog as well on Facebook. There's lots of great tidbits on pain and how to train best for running on there. Also, don't forget that there are show notes for our Facebook Live sessions, so some of the details that we'll bring up here, don't madly scribble down. Check out our show notes and they will provide them all there. And of course, take advantage of the fact this is a live event, so fire us questions so you could tap into the deep pool of knowledge between us. Sure. Okay, so our first question here is from Jonathan, and I think it's directed to you, Ryan.
Yeah, I'll take this one. The question was, do you have any tips on the best way to use a journal or app to track my progress as a runner? First of all, I think it's a great thing to always record what you do while you're out running. Myself, having run for over 2 decades now, I still love looking back and going through training and speeds, to reminisce when I actually could run fast, of routes and training that I did, and the detail on that of how far you ran, how fast you ran, how you felt, the terrain, even recording things of what shoes you wore, and you can even go a little bit farther on that of the nutrition things that were involved on that run. The best thing with tracking it, I think, is the accountability, especially if you kind of tell other people of what you're doing for your training program as well, and the ability for somebody to kind of check in and monitor your progress on that. There's a lot of apps out there. Some people are users of Strava, which is kind of like an online world where you can measure your speed and distance versus other people on segments that are very, very unique to the community that you're running in. One that I like using is the Nike running app. It's a free app that downloads to your phone, and it basically uses the GPS off your phone. It doesn't use data. You can just put it on airplane mode, and once you get back to data, it'll upload your run, it'll upload the map, it'll upload your splits. But there's also an online community as well. You can create friends groups in there of who can see what you ran, other people as well. So again, just creating that accountability and having that community as well. You can do challenges of who's going to run the most kilometers this week or this month. All those things are just those extra kind of motivators on days when you may not feel like going out for a run, or the weather may kind of want you to stay on the couch, to actually get out there and go do your run because you've created that accountability of other people seeing your journal, your diary.
Some of those have really great add-on features, like the ability to record the mileage for your shoes. I find that feature in Strava really helpful, so I know, okay, I did this run in this pair of shoes, and it's getting up in Ks. I think this is a good time to replace it.
It's like letting you know when the oil changes due, right?
Exactly. Okay, moving on, we've got a question from Mark here that's asking what my stance is on using technology like heart rate monitors and GPS watches to improve training versus just hitting the road. And I guess this has been around for really a generation now that we've been introduced to technology, heart rate monitors and the like in running. I think generally they have a bigger place to play, but it does depend on the type of goals you have with running. If you're a pretty casual runner and you like to get out, I think using GPS watches at the very least, like this lovely Garmin Forerunner 25, makes it really easy to upload your data for journals and keeping a record of your mileage. I'm not someone that likes to come back and write in a diary about what I've written, but I find that this is easy. It transfers everything over to my Garmin account just through Bluetooth automatically, and then the Garmin account pushes everything to Strava, which is great that I haven't done anything, and then immediately all my runs are archived, and I know how I felt, and so it keeps that, as Ryan says, accountability there, which I find really helpful to know if I'm starting to lose a little bit in my monthly kilometers. Of course, if you're starting to get into the more competitive side, or you've got an event that you have approaching, then using this technology can certainly give you a leg up. Excuse the pun. The heart rate monitors have been used since their inception to really help do a couple things as far as acting as a governor on your training. For your long, slow runs, it helps make sure they're slow enough, that you're not overtraining. And then during your interval work, to make sure that you're working hard enough, that you're in the correct zone, as it were, to make sure that you're stressing the appropriate energy systems. Similarly, during those interval workouts, I think they're good to make sure that your recovery is sufficient enough between different sets, which is really, really key. Now, when you do get a heart rate monitor, there will be some guidance on how to identify these zones that I'm talking about to know whether you're aerobic, anaerobic, alactic, etc. And you can certainly spend months researching this on your own, or you can go to get yourself tested through a group like Peak Center, and seeing Lewis and his colleagues there. The benefit for this is that the app that you get and the software will make sort of an educated guess on what they think your zones will be, and that may or may not actually reflect what your real training zones will be. So going to having the physiology testing, where you're usually on a treadmill running and they're measuring your lactate levels, they're measuring your heart rate, they're even measuring your amount of oxygen consumed, can really, really take your training to another level, as far as being really accurate to know at what intensity you should be working at, and then working with a coach such as Ryan or anyone else in the community is a great tool. And that's just, it provides that level of precision in training that you just can't get if you don't have that technology. Probably my last point on this is, since doing track training using a GPS watch that will tell you your real-time pace is super cool, and a great motivator to keep running at that pace when you're doing something like a mile time trial, to know not to slow down, because you will need to work harder to keep the same pace as you go through those longer intervals, and your watch is a great way to tell you that. Any thoughts you have, Ryan, on technology?
No, I think you hit all the points there, and whether that's the elite-driven athlete or just the person looking to get into it, by finding those zones, I find you really, and identifying those, you maximize the efficiency and get the proper bang for your buck of what that workout is intended for. Because a common error that some newbies make is they do too much too soon, and they go too fast. They go above the zones they should be in. So having that to indicate the specific zone for that run is just, these devices, they let you know when you go out of that zone. You can trigger above or below. It'll beep and let you know that you're working too hard or not working hard enough, and both of those have value as well, not just the working too hard, but certainly making sure you're going slow enough.
And so on that note, Katie's asking about how we should adapt our training in this lovely weather that we've been getting in the Lower Mainland.
Yeah, if we opened the blinds behind us, you'd see a winter wonderland out there, which I know the rest of Canada likes to laugh at Vancouver, going, it's only a foot of snow, suck it up. That's what we get for months and months. But it does take a bit of adapting on a couple aspects of what you're doing. Obviously, if it's very slick and slippery conditions, depending on where you live as well, like if you live at the top of North Vancouver, you can't find anywhere flat to run, so you're potentially dealing with a lot of sliding and injury risk going out for a run around your neighborhood. So treadmill, I know some people love treadmills. Personally, I hate the treadmill. But obviously, if it's really icy and conditions just aren't there, and the sidewalks aren't clear, the pathways aren't clear, you may have to resort to doing one of your scheduled runs for the week on the treadmill. And the biggest thing is just going to be modify the pace. Throw your target times for whatever that run was going to be out the window. Don't worry that it's going to be slower. Enjoy the snow. We only get it, I think this is the second time that we've had significant snowfall in the 9 years that I've lived here. Enjoy it. Go out and have fun in it, but don't worry about time. Don't worry about trying to go at that cadence that you normally would, because that's what may cause you to slip, or you hit a piece of ice and you pull your leg back a little too quickly and you get a groin pull, hamstring pull, what have you. So Adjust the pace. If you're a road runner, use trail shoes. On the bottom of them, they do have more grip. They're meant for trail, but they're meant for those muddy conditions, which that slush out there right now is kind of mimicking, but on the roads and sidewalks for us. There's also yak tracks or crampons that you can use as well. That's basically just a device that kind of covers the bottom of your shoe that has ice studs or picks in it, just again to give you that traction and give you a little bit more stability. But still get out there, still enjoy it. Just because there's snow doesn't mean, hey, I'm done with my training for the year until the snow goes away. If it's safe to do so, get out and enjoy it, but just modify that pace. And looks like we've had a question come through from one of the viewers now. If you want to,
thank you, Ali, for your question.
Take that one.
So Ali writes, thoughts on adding shims to shoes to compensate for leg length discrepancy and change in shoe drop profile. Interesting. Yeah, it's a good question. We use heel lifts in the clinic here when people come in occasionally for leg length differences. I should add that most physiotherapists that you speak to will say any leg length that's less than a centimeter or 10 millimeters may really not be a structural difference in the length of your bones, but rather a alignment difference in your pelvis or in how your hips are positioned. And so it's something called a functional leg length difference. This is something good to have assessed by your physio. You can also come in and certainly see us at Kintec through a pedorthic assessment. We'll look at your leg length and have a look there. We generally don't rush to putting shims into your shoes because it has effects on dynamic motion that can be difficult to predict. Yes, it will balance you in a static posture when you're standing, but when you're running, it can make changes to the how quickly your foot progresses onto your forefoot and other changes on lever arms in ways that can create significant effects. That if it's needed, if you do truly have a leg length difference, it can be a useful tool. It also can be a useful tool to help encourage range of motion in the ankle. But again, this is something that we use carefully and don't use on the basis of, okay, I have a leg length difference, I should always try this. Having said that, you can also take the pragmatic approach and just try putting a little bit of toilet paper, rolled up toilet paper underneath your shoe so that you're getting a lift of only maybe a few millimeters. And if that helps with respect to hip or back pain that you may be getting as a result of this leg length difference, then you know that you're going in the right direction. So thank you, Ali, for that. Right, so I think it's getting to Carol's question here that was emailed in earlier. Carol writes, I'm thinking of getting into running, but I have some instability in my left ankle. It's been like that for a few years now at least, possibly from a previous injury, as is often the case. But this is affecting her confidence at all times while she's running. Any suggestions for improving that? I assume referring to the instability before I get into training, or do I need to? So a couple things here, Carol, that I guess it's worth noting. Do you have pain in the ankle when you're running or not? If you do have pain in the ankle that you think is a result, and it's in the ankle joint itself, so using the model here, it would sort of be around this area of the foot. If you have general pain through here during your runs, and if it's worse after your runs, I think you might want to come in and see either a physiotherapist or a pedorthist for further assessment. And I'd probably avoid running in the short term until you can get that checked out, and then use something lower profile like cycling or swimming in terms of getting your fitness, maintaining your fitness. If it's just a concern thinking I want to do all I can to prevent re-injury, you should know that running generally doesn't stress the ankle stabilizers a great deal, but we are dealing with an injury that is chronically undertreated because a lot of times, as I spoke in the previous Facebook post, the ligaments that are holding the ankle together, preventing it from falling to the side here, when those are stretched during an ankle sprain, the sensors that are inside there are often rarely recalibrated, if you will. And the only way to really do that is through balance and proprioceptive exercises that your physiotherapist can give you some guidance on. So I'd say keep running. Probably stick to the roads for now. If you're interested in getting into trail running and joining us for we've got a new trail clinic coming up, or sign up coming soon.
Yeah, out in the valley in Abbotsford, March 4th, which is Saturdays. I think they go 9 a.m. And then the North Shore a little bit later in April, the 26th,
Nice.
Which is a Wednesday, and those are in the evenings at 6:30.
Nice. And
Yeah.
trail running's super fun, but I'd look after that ankle. See your physio, get you on a proper progression for retraining those sensors and that detection system for avoiding future sprains. Keeping this moving.
Looks like we have a new question as well that's popped up.
Thank you.
We'll jump the queue.
Lifemark Health from what I presume would be Atlantic Canada. Wow, we're pan-Canada in their broadcast. Our pedorthist has a patient. Welcome to the interweb, eh?
Yeah.
Our pedorthist
Interwebs.
has a patient with restricted range of motion pain and first MTP joint, and is wondering the best option of running shoes. Are there better orthotic accommodations to consider? Absolutely. That shoe there is, this is a great shoe for individuals that have compromised mobility or function in the first MTP joint. Probably people are wondering what the heck is an MTP joint. It's a lovely name for this joint here in the big toe that helps when you raise your big toe. It's that joint between the metatarsal and the phalanx, or the metatarsal-phalangeal joint. So people can have either pain here or arthritis or just restricted range of motion because of structural changes to the joint that don't let it bend up this way. Now, of course, when you're running, what will happen is that you're trying to push the foot. It is going to try to extend on the toes, but if this joint is restricted, then it either won't allow you to do that, or it will be painful to do so. So a shoe such as a Hoka here probably best illustrates the example of a forefoot rocker. In this case, the shoe is then going to roll forward simply on the basis of this slope in the shoe as the body weight's shifting forward. So it's allowing that MTP joint to stay in a neutral position and not need to bend nearly as much. All shoes, running shoes, will have that. Even the humble Nike Pegasus has a bit of a rocker. Of course, it will get you to here, but a lot of times your heel will need to raise to there, which will require some degree of flexion in the sole. So the higher the rocker, the less strain there will be on that joint. And this is often a case of crossing a threshold, that if you do not have a rocker high enough and it still elicits pain, then you may need to have the shoe modified. And certainly the pedorthist is a great tool for assessing whether that's needed or not, as well as being able to provide that surface where they simply do some shoe surgery by splitting under the sole here, pulling this back, adding some foam, grinding it to however much we need, preferably in the matching lovely yellow shade here, and then grinding that and putting it back. So that's a great tool. From an orthotic accommodation standpoint, what we would often do in that case is make sure that the contact through the arch here is quite close to the foot. So we do want to try to support the joints just before that area. So we're trying to take stress generally away from the inside of the foot and try to reposition it on the middle of the foot as best we can. And there may be case of adding some splint or some firmer material under there to again make the orthotic less flexible. That's something that we can do in the orthotic, but generally I've had better success when we try to provide that stiffening directly in the shoe. So thank you, Lifemark Health. A great question. First, MTP, osteoarthritis, or range of motion limitations has to be one of the best indications for using a pedorthus, because we can really improve their quality of life. Okay, over to you, Ryan, with Sean's question on wants to get faster.
Perfect, yeah. So question from Sean is, I'm new at running and would like to get faster. Should I be more concerned about improving my distance or my speed first? Great question, and the answer to that would be worrying about distance. So in the training program world, there's what's called building the house. And if you don't have a strong foundation of those long, slow miles, everything, layers that you put on top just kind of come crumbling down. So that base at first should be focusing for your first 3 months, 4 months of running, of just focusing out and getting comfortable running at a slow pace and not worrying about putting different layers on, like speed work or hill training or strength training. Once you feel a little bit more comfortable in that, then slowly you start edging in and dabbling in speed work. And it's great to do it in a clinic setting or with a coach as well, just to make sure those workouts are challenging enough to start building that speed, but also not to do too much too soon, because that's the real risk of overuse and some injuries occurring. So once you've built that base, again, 3 months, 4 months ideally, of just getting out there and enjoying a run, not worrying about pace, not worrying about speed, and then certainly following stress and rest as well. You're never going to do, when you're starting off into speed work, of doing multiple days in a row of it. You're going to do a hard speed work, and then you're probably going to take a day off, or at the most do a very short, slow run the next day to flush those legs out. If you start doing multiple speed days in a row, again, you just up that risk for overuse and for injury. And probably start slower on the speed work as well. Don't try to run a 4-minute mile in your first speed work session. You know, find that comfort zone and build each week on it and get faster and faster, rather than, you know, trying to do too much too soon. And again, that's where, you know, the risk of injury or pulling something drastically gets magnified. So build the base, get strong, get comfortable, then start adding speed work once a week after that. And then once you're, you know, comfortable with speed work, you know, again, this is looking, you know, maybe 6 months, 9 months, 12 months down the road, that you can start doing multiple speed work sessions per week. But it is a process that you have to go through, and it's all about teaching the body to adapt to those new stresses and forces that are put on, either by doing hill repeats or track work or speed intervals. So,
you know, you've done a good track workout when your arms are sore.
yeah.
I know the other day. But then again, runners aren't necessarily known for having massive pipes in the first place.
Not me.
Thank you, Ryan. Annie writes here, I've tried getting into running a few times before, but it seems like each time I end my routine, either because I get sick, injured, or something else happens to get in the way. How do we suggest getting back into training when falling off the wagon? And that's I think a good comment, because I think running really lends itself best if you can be consistent. And what is really important to link into that is just to do a little bit, but do it consistently, and to slowly build up over time. And your muscles will develop that memory, and your whole body will develop the adaptation to running, that you'll start to find ways to work around those problems because you just simply crave the movement. I think, as a general rule, always start slow and don't be afraid of not doing enough, because any little amount of running is good, I think, and keep within your own limits. If that's only 5 to 10 minutes of running, but you do it 3 or 4 times a week, that's great. And I know that doesn't necessarily reflect on everybody. Usually, some people feel that you need to run an hour in order for it to be meaningful, and that certainly is not the case. Running is a bit of a different sport in the sense that there's this huge component of physiological adaptation that has to take place before you can really build the conditioning, and that goes to Ryan's house analogy, which I think is so appropriate. And doing snacking at running in little amounts, whether it's 10 minutes or half an hour, it is still building to that. Always consider that for every kilometer that you're running, you're making about 600 to 800 footsteps, which is the equivalent of 600 to 800 repetitions of a particular movement, like doing little squats, which is effectively what you're doing when you're running. So don't at all feel ashamed or that you haven't done enough, even if you've only done a lower duration run than you otherwise would have thought. And I think those little runs are great to help link your periods together when you have sickness or your kids are sick or you feel injured. It's a great way to recover from injury because it really gives you a chance to listen to your body. And I think in all those cases, especially when you're getting back to it, as a good entertainer should, leave them wanting more. Finish the run bored that you wanted, that it was a tease, you want to still be out there. Finish feeling that you still have a lot left in the tank. Great, because then you can run again tomorrow. And then the next day, and keep it a pattern, and you'll find that you'll be able to build up that volume quicker than you thought. Another great tool to this is using a clinic. I can't emphasize enough how I think valuable it is running with other people. The social aspect, of course, if they're the right people. It's an important caveat. If they just make fun of you and throw dirt at you, then probably avoid those. But yeah, the social aspect of running in people in your own pace group is overwhelming. I think as far as a motivator to get out to help again motivate you to work around whatever barriers may be in your life to running and be a great facilitator, because the clinic thinks of the route. They provide you all this extra guidance on form, training, footwear, hydration, etc. And you just go in there and then you just sort of plug your brain into the clinic and you forget about it and you just run with them. You don't think about anything else. So those are a couple quick tips. I think start slow. Don't be afraid to snack with your exercise. That means do it in little bits, and then using a clinic. Nikki's now asking about where your favorite trails are in BC.
I guess starting locally, the Vancouver area. Two of my favorites is Dreamweaver Trail, which is on Grouse Mountain, Lower Grouse Mountain. And actually quite close to that trail is a trail called Jet Boy, which isn't marked. You need to know where it is. I don't recommend going out and trying to find it unless you have somebody that kind of knows the area, because you can get quite turned around and potentially lost, and then you're one of those people that needs to call the good folks at North Shore Rescue to come bail you off the mountain. But this is one that we've done in the North Van trail clinics that I teach as well. And in 1954, a U.S. fighter jet crashed into the side of Grouse Mountain. It was to be landing at McChord Air Force Base, which is about 120 miles south of here, just a little bit south of Seattle. And one of the jet engines, they took obviously everything that mattered for military secrets or what have you off the mountain. The sweep team came in, but the jet engine still remains on that trail. So there is a trail that goes up. It's not marked because they don't want people in large numbers going to see it. But it is really cool to see the jet engine still there, and it is a memorial for the fighter jet pilot that was flying that aircraft, as the body was never recovered, if I remember correctly. So it's his unofficial gravesite as well. So they have a little
there's
placard.
Body parts around there too.
Yeah, you might find some body parts from 1954. I don't know what the decomposition rate is,
Okay.
but no, it's a great one. So locally, for me, those are two good ones. I don't know if you want to add your local favorites, staying within the Vancouver area.
I think a great one that I got in the way of almost completing last year was the hike up to Coliseum Mountain. I understand there's another plane crash.
There is,
up there once you get above the tree line.
Planes do not fly here.
Yeah. Yep, and the House Sound Crest Trail up around the
beautiful.
Lions is spectacular. It's you're working certainly, and it's not for the faint of heart to be able to run that, but it's a great prep for some of the longer ultra distance. I think the whole House Suncrest Trail is 35K.
Yeah,
roughly.
but a lot of elevation and a
lot
very
of elevation. Yeah.
30K hike. I think I would allocate 10 to 12 hours in good conditions.
Yeah.
To do, just to put it into perspective of how tough and challenging
Absolutely.
that terrain is. Let's go BC as a whole. For me, some of the trails out in Manning Park, Skyline and Heather Trail offer some stunning vistas right into the U.S. and the Pacific Crest Trail, which runs from Mexico all the way up to Canada, 2,600 miles. Its terminus is in Manning Park as well, and then you need to hike another 8 miles or 13 kilometers to get to civilization and get a ride back to wherever you're going. For BC, those would be some of my top favorites. You want to
Mount Garibaldi and the hike from Garibaldi Lake up and around down to Cheakamus.
Yeah.
And there's actually an event I think that does that.
Rebel Creek.
Rebel Creek, yeah.
26K, I believe.
And I think you're only allowed 5 people, or no, it's not 5. It's
80
like
people,
80
I think,
people,
is
so it's
the
a
Park
set
Service allows only just for environmental impact to the trail.
If you're all into like local geography and the forces of both glaciation and volcanism, then that's the hike for you.
Let's expand a little farther. We're going to do 2 more quick, Canada and then the world.
Okay.
Canada for me, if anybody from Alberta is in the Calgary area, Nahi Ridge, which is out Kananaskis country, head out Bragg Creek and then Highway 66 till it dead ends at Elbow Campground there. Beautiful, stunning views, and just on the other side of the Elbow River there, Forget-Me-Not Ridge. On a clear day, you just get some vast, expansive views of the start of the Canadian Rockies. And then Toronto area. I used to live in Ontario for a good chunk of my running career. A little hidden gem in Milton, which is basically halfway in between Toronto and Waterloo, called Hilton Falls. There's a conservation area there on the north side of the 401. Some great trails through there, and on the south side of the 401, a place called Crawford Lake, which offers some stunning views. I don't know if we're allowed to put photos up after, if that's possible, but we can send our web folks some pictures of these places to maybe whet your appetite to get out there. But how about you for Canada?
My trail running experience is limited, unfortunately, just to BC. I've run around Lake Ontario. No, that doesn't really qualify as a trail run. It was fun to run on the boardwalk, but I don't know if that really counts. Are we able to disclose the JetBoy coordinates, or do you have to join the?
No, you gotta join the clinic or know somebody.
It's
it's hard because they used to have some trail markers out, not officially labeled. The North Shore has done a great job of actually putting at intersections, this direction is going to get you to this terminus or trailhead or road, and this is the distance of it, but there's nothing. It's all been stripped and the markings have been taken off of it. But again, you can get quite turned around and disoriented in there. So it's kind of, you gotta know where you're going. So. Okay.
Our risk management lawyers are telling us that we shouldn't attempt to put any
liability
coordinates on there. So
come take the North Van Trail Clinic on April 26th, and I know I'll show you where the jet engine is. I know you've lived in other places in the world. So favorite trail in the world that you've run elsewhere?
In Australia, in the Springbrook area, National Park is gorgeous. You run along this old world escarpment, essentially underneath waterfalls, with a great view overlooking the Gold Coast of Queensland. It's pretty spectacular. And you run down to this meeting of 2 creeks, splash some water on your face, pick the leeches off your ankles and shoes, and then hump it back up. So it's a pretty modest little 13K jaunt, but it's spectacular.
Nice, and for me, I mean, there's lots of beautiful places in the world to run. I'll give mine and a shout out and a plug to actually a race that I am involved in Africa, in Lesotho, which you may have thought was pronounced Lesotho, which I first thought, and once I got there for my first time, I was corrected in a hurry that it's actually pronounced Lesotho. And that's a tiny country that's completely surrounded by South Africa, and it's called the Kingdom in the Sky. The entire country lies above 4,500 feet in elevation, so it's quite a mountainous country, and there's a 38K and 50K in a place called, I'm going to butcher the name, Selanyani National Park. That's probably nowhere close. Apologies if anyone from Lesotho is watching.
We are on the internet.
We are on the internet. They do have the internet there. I've gotten cell service there. I've been at that race 4 times, and you drive 42K down this road that dead ends in the national park at a lodge that is Lesotho's only 5-star lodge. And from there, they have a course laid out. The elevation of the lodge is 6,600 feet or 2,000 meters above sea level, and it goes up to this plateau where you see nothing. There's not a telephone pole, there's not a house, there's not a street, there is nothing in view. It's just views, mountains, sky. You'll come across the occasional goat herder or herder up there. It's a very nomadic country in that regard. But the views are just unbelievable, expansive waterfalls, creek crossings, and some great pristine trail running. So if you want to go run 38K or 50K at the end of November, Lesotho Ultra Trail, and the views are just absolutely stunning and absolutely phenomenal. So
get a taste.
That's my one for the world.
Nice. Get a taste of true wilderness outside of Canada. Lovely. And so getting to Taro's question, our last question here in this Facebook Live session is when do we want to consider a hydration pack versus a water bottle? I'm going to be somewhat bold in my response by saying always. I don't really have a lot to say about running with a water bottle. I know some people do. I don't know if it's a style feature. I think it's more prevalent in like the trail running ultra community to be sort of this very minimalist. I don't have anything on myself. I'm just running with this water bottle, and that's all I need to do 100 miles. Meanwhile, the rest of us, I think, like the comfort of having other things to bring, especially in the trails. It's great to have a pack because you can bring a small shell, you can bring food with you, you can bring, especially for a lot of races where they now mandate that you have to bring a bivouac overnight bag. You can get these tiny little bags. You have to bring a headlamp and a few other accessories, survival gear essentially. So I think they're a must in the trail running side. And I think that's also leaked over onto road running, where people have found they're just far more convenient, and it's closer to, I guess from a mechanic standpoint, I look at it, it's closer to your center of mass. So you're not, rather than wearing something on your hips that wobble around a lot, if you carry something and it's really tucked into the small of your back, or with like the Solomon packs that we carry at the Run Center, they just really just wrap right around your torso. So it's minimizing the space that the water is held away from your body. And that, I think, really adds a lot for comfort and the ability to store lots of things. Plus, having the little tube is just great, because then you just, I'm thirsty, I'm just reaching over here and done, rather than having to like pull out the little nozzle, the little nipple thing of the water bottle, and then drink. It's little things like that, but when you're running and you're exhausted and you're into, your 30th kilometer of a long run or in a race, and that makes a big difference, I think. You probably have a thought on this.
Yeah, I just think those are great points. And whether you're a high mileage runner, even for the beginner runner, either venturing out onto the trails or just doing a road run, the preparedness of having those things just in case. I remember a story from when I first moved here of somebody, they were only maybe 5 or 6K up a trail that's not even really a technical trail. I think it might have been similar to Fisherman's, for those that know Fisherman's. And they rolled an ankle and just nobody really knew that they were out there, and there was no cell service. So they actually, what they thought was going to just be a nice 45 to 60 minute easy run without much elevation change and without much technicality to it, actually ended up spending the night out there. And obviously that's the worst case scenario, but by having all those things of just in case something goes wrong, and even if you're out running on the road of, you may get chilled quite quickly after, so by having a pack and the ability to pull out a new layer, a dry layer, and put on, I think it just makes kind of that recovery and end of run and comfort a little bit better. And then again, worst case scenario, if something does happen, if you are out on the trails, you're prepared to have that. And having the pack versus the bottle really affords you to kind of tuck anything and everything in there, be it, a phone, a pair of gloves or a beanie or another layer just to, get warm if something does happen. And that does happen on roads or trails. And, if you cramp up or, pull something or roll an ankle out while running on the roads as well, you can pull that layer out and you can get warm quickly rather than having that miserable soak to your core death march back to the car or to transit or whatever it happens to be. Pull the phone out, call a cab, whatever it needs to be. So,
yeah, very true. Okay, we're going to call it there, but thanks everyone for watching this, especially thank you to those watching live and asking your questions. We're happy to be here and to answer them for you. Check out our blog and our previous live podcasts, our broadcasts on the Facebook page, and we'll have all those details for you on the show notes. And